G'day there. Recently I asked a question in the Communities tab about how you felt about your own landscape photography. The results were interesting. Most people who responded gave themselves 3 stars, with only 8% completely happy with the images they're creating. Naturally, we're all striving to improve. So in this video, I'm going to cover the 5 areas of landscape photography that have the biggest impact in improving the images you create. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. So if you need a website, a domain, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace and use the discount code Marr. I'm sure you've heard before that gear doesn't matter. And while in some aspects of photography it does, when it comes to improving your landscape photography, it doesn't. What does matter though is knowing how to operate the gear you have.
So I'm at ISO 100. I've got the GFX 100S here, of course, with the 32 to 64 mm lens. I've got the nifty version 6 on the front, and I've got the polarizer on as well. Of course I need the polarizer because that wet rock, when the sun comes out, I get all this glare and stuff like that. So that polarizer pretty much deals with that glare, which is good. Knocks down the light just a few stops, but I've got heaps of light here. I haven't got a 6 stop or a 3 stop or a 10 stop on, just using the natural light. My aperture is at 16, and with ISO 100 at the moment I've got a shutter speed of 1/4 of a second. Now I've just taken a shot at 1/3 of a second, and I just felt like there was just a little bit too much water coming down that waterfall. So it captured it too much, or there was too much water for the 1/3 of a second shutter speed. So I just quickened it up to 1/4 of a second.
This is about knowing the settings to use for different scenes, knowing how to quickly dial in those settings into your camera, and understanding the potential limitations, for example, the dynamic range of some smaller sensors or the narrower depth of field you can get with larger sensors. Knowing your lenses is equally important. Lenses tend to be a little simpler to operate, but being familiar with the field of view or the look that you can achieve with each lens means you can quickly grab the right lens for the right scene you're shooting. I've seen this a fair bit in the workshops that I run, where photographers are having to spend a bit of time changing a setting or a particular mode on their camera. The less you have to concentrate on selecting and operating your gear, the more time you can dedicate to the artistic side of landscape photography, like exploring the scene, working compositions, and creating compelling images. In the end, you don't want your gear to get in the way of capturing awesome photos. In fact, you eventually want to get to the point where you can rely on muscle memory for the placements of dials, and controlling your camera settings becomes second nature. There's 2 things you can do to get to know your gear better. Lots of practice, and don't fall into the trap of having too much gear or constantly changing the gear you use. If you want help with understanding how best to set up your camera and the settings to use, you can check out my video on the best settings for landscape photography. I've also done a video on how to get the most out of your wide-angle lens, so I'll put a link to both of those in the description below so you can check them out. This next area I think is often overlooked, but it's pretty important when looking for better landscape images in a location, and that's the skill of observation.
Just behind me you might be able to see just how it's cut away the sand along the beach. And it's quite a big drop. It's around about 2.5 meters just there, and then it's of course uncovering all of these rocks in the foreground. But that's not going to be my foreground. I'm going to continue walking up here just to see what's there. A little bit further back there's this little pool of water that's been created up on top of the beach, and the waves every now and then push enough water up and it fills that little pool, and then it trickles off back down to the ocean. And I just love watching the elements interact with each other. It's the sort of thing that really interests me and makes potentially a really good feature in a photo.
This is about what to look for when you're exploring a location, giving yourself enough time to properly observe an area, taking note of the elements and the interactions that you see to discover the photographic potential of a scene. It's through observation that you start to work out the story that you're going to capture, and begin to visualize the image you want to create. If you struggle a little bit with finding compelling compositions or being able to see images within the landscape, this is probably an area you may want to work on. I've done a whole video on composition skills where I break it down into 3 stages and suggest a whole range of things you can do to improve in this area. So I'll add a link to that video in the description. Now, the light that you get on a scene is going to significantly impact the type of image you shoot as well as the mood that you capture.
So you can see the sun on my face. That's a pretty good sign. What I was hoping for was I had some high cloud that kind of went off pretty close to the horizon, and then I can see a bank of cloud again on the horizon, but the fact that you can see sun on my face means that there is a gap. So I'm getting some direct light at the moment. I was going to shoot back towards where I came from and get some side light against some of these rocks. This gap is not going to last for too long. Then the sun is going to go behind the cloud right on the horizon, and we're effectively going to have had sunset a little bit early. But the gap, hopefully, some orange and pink light will come through that gap once the sun has set, and it hits this beautiful cloud.
While in nature, you don't really have much control over the light beyond selecting the time of day you're going to shoot. It is helpful to understand what the light is doing, the type of light that is falling on a scene, and how the light is interacting with the landscape. Being able to read the light in a scene means you have a better chance of predicting what the light is going to do, and understanding how to use that light in your image is going to go a long way to improving the landscape photos you take. A couple of months ago, I did a video on the different types of light you can get in the natural landscape and what the best type of light is for landscape photography, which I'll link in the description. Now, if you're familiar at all with my channel, you've probably picked up over the years that I think composition makes the biggest difference when it comes to creating better and more impactful images of the landscape.
So what I've done here is I've positioned the camera with these 3 rocks, and I'm pretty much looking at the face of these just amazing, amazing red cliffs. So I've positioned it so that the 3 rocks in front of me, there's some symmetry there. We've got the smaller one down at the front, and then there's 2 slightly larger ones at the back there. That's some foreground interest, and of course your eye is then immediately drawn along with the veins in the sand up to the red cliffs in the background.
If you want to improve the images you take, your composition skills is the best thing to work on. Now, composition can be quite daunting, but starting off with some composition rules and approaches is a great place to start. But after a while, understanding what you should be trying to achieve with your composition is going to be key to creating better images. Your composition should be trying to simplify a scene, guide the eye, and engage and connect with the viewer. Telling a story through your image is fundamental to engaging the viewer and helping them connect to the landscape. If you just think landscape photography is about taking pretty pictures, honestly, you're missing the point. A well-composed story of the landscape builds a connection with the viewer. I've created a series of videos over the years covering the many aspects of composition, which I'll share in the description. Now, before we get to the last area, I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. There are actually lots of ways having your own website can improve your photography. It's a place that you own, where you can share your images in a way that you want them to be displayed. With Squarespace, in just a couple of clicks, you can add a blog that allows you to document your photography journey and helps others discover your site through SEO. You can create galleries for your images and photography projects on a Squarespace site that helps you keep you focused and motivated. But most of all, Squarespace makes the task of setting up and maintaining a website very quick and easy, because they handle all of the hosting, all of the updates to the platform, and the responsive design through their beautiful templates. So you don't have to worry about any of that. As a result, you'll end up with more time to enjoy your landscape photography. If you ever find yourself needing some help, you can rely on their award-winning 24/7 customer service. So head on over to squarespace.com for a free trial. That'll give you heaps of time to get your website set up. And then when you're ready to launch, make sure you go to squarespace.com/Andrew Marr to get 10% off your first purchase. So far, the areas that I've discussed here are to do with the process of either finding or capturing an image. But when it comes to creating that final landscape photo, 50% of it is with the capturing of it out in the field, and the remaining 50% is in the post-processing. I know editing images is not everybody's favourite part of landscape photography. While I don't mind editing, I'd much rather be out shooting photos. But I encourage you to do as much editing as you can because there are so many benefits. It's an opportunity to review the images that you've taken and work out ways in which they can be improved. You can get a better understanding of how far images can be enhanced in post-processing. And if you're familiar with how images can be edited, you can develop a better vision for an image when you're out in the field. At the beginning of the year, I discussed in a video the 3 biggest editing myths that highlights the importance of post-processing, and I explained the impact that it can have on the rest of your creative process. I'll add a link to that video in the description so you can check it out. I hope you found the breakdown of these areas helpful. I think each of these areas are important to work on if you're looking at improving your landscape photography. As you can see, I've created at least one video on each of these areas throughout the year. To help you out, I've put all of the videos that I've mentioned here together in one playlist that I'll link below. You can treat it like a free mini landscape photography course. There's a common theme across all of these 5 areas. Each one is a skill. So if you want to develop your skill level, not only will the videos help, but you'll need to find opportunities to practice. If you found this helpful, please give the video a like and share it with your friends. This is probably the last video from me for this year, as I'm going to take a short break. So I hope you have a great Christmas and New Year's, and I hope you have the chance to get out for some landscape photography. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.